Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with Navy Vietnam veteran and lifelong guitar aficionado, Dennis Hook. He possesses a unique blend of expertise in both high-tech engineering and guitar craftsmanship. With 58 years of experience as a guitar tech, he has mastered the art of the compensating nut, a crucial technique for perfect guitar tuning. After a decade in the tech industry creating passive microwave filters, Dennis founded a company that developed advanced GPS models for military and aerospace applications. His innovative approach and deep understanding of guitar mechanics culminated in his book, Guitar Nut Compensation, The Physics and Mechanics of Setting Up a Guitar to Play and Tune. It's quite a story. Enjoy. You have a wonderful background, Dennis, so thank you for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
No problem. My pleasure.
So before we get into your life as a Vietnam veteran, as a guitar aficionado, I want to start our journey with what we all just lived through, which was this COVID pandemic. And I know we're getting kind of tired of talking about it, but ultimately, how did you survive that time period, and how did it change the way that you live your life now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Fortunately, I didn't have any problems. I never got it, so thank God for that. But it was quite a period of, being very careful and being isolated, and it wasn't very pleasant. But I did a lot of kind of researching and finishing my book during that whole period, because I wanted to do the book, but there was so many delays, including the COVID, and then after the COVID, I had a number of medical issues on my own that I had to deal with. So I promised my viewers that I would have some videos out, and it took about 2 years to write the book, and then about another 2 years to get everything situated so I could start doing the series of videos.
So talk to me a little bit about what you're doing today. If I put you in front of a bunch of third grade students and they were curious about your life and it's career day and they were like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
Well, I'm retired now, but I started out basically. When I was in the Navy, and when I got out of the Navy, I was an electronic tech, and went to work for a company that was making RF microwave passive filters for a lot of satellites and communications and a lot of military work. And we were actually starting to make what they call a triplexer, which is three different filters that pass three different frequencies and reject everything else around them. And those triplexers were used in the planes that were flying over Vietnam, because the anti-aircraft missiles were being such a threat that these triplexers actually helped the planes survive in that environment. And we were working something like 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, just to produce these things. So then after I worked there for about 10 years, last few years, I was promoted to being engineering, because I was the only one that was capable of doing it. So I went out after that and started my own business, doing the same thing, and worked for about close to 18 years doing all kinds of aerospace work, and for companies like Raytheon and Hughes and all the major contractors. We were making these GPS low noise amplifier filters for the smart bombs and the smart rockets. And I don't know if I'm sure people have heard about ATAC, and that's what they're using in Ukraine and different places now. And we developed those filters for the Army to use in those ATAC missiles as well. So I've had quite and during this whole time, I was started playing guitar in uh, my freshman year of college, and all the way up through then and up until now, I've always tinkered with the guitars, never understood why they wouldn't play in tune. And I got to the point where I was in my business, I was making money that I started collecting guitars. And I had up to like 35 guitars at one time, and all fairly high end guitars, but none of them played in tune. And I have a pretty good, hearing, so it just drove me crazy. 19, there was an article in 1992 that I read about this guy, Stephen Delph, and he talked about the principle of compensating the nut to make a guitar play in tune. And it was extending the nut breakpoints forward towards the neck, which shortened the string. And I thought, well, that's kind of counterintuitive, because when you press down the string at the open chords, you're pressing it sharp. And if you shorten the string, you're making it even sharper. So it was kind of counterintuitive. I didn't quite understand it, but I tried it and it actually worked. So I spent probably the last 20 years of my career in doing tech work on my own guitars, and then bandmates. I had a couple garage bands that I developed, and I was doing all the guitars and for all the bandmates that played guitars, and then I started doing them for other clients. So I had quite a career in doing that, and it was very satisfying, because when I would do a guitar for a client, he would come back, sit down and start playing, and sometimes he would sit down and play for like 10 minutes at a time, wouldn't say a word, and then all of a sudden they looked up and said, wow, I was never able to do that before.
Wow.
And it was very satisfying to see the results of their reactions.
So what made you pick up the guitar, and who were some early influences for you?
Oh gosh, probably my first major influence was Chet Atkins.
Yeah.
He's known as Mr. Guitar, and I just loved the way he could play anything with his finger picking and do the bass line as well as the melody. And I just thought he was, and he actually was one of the best guitar players, I think, in history. Of course, after that, I got, David Gilmour and Joe Satriani, and I mean, there's been so many guitar players that are so good. So I had a lot of influences, and my influences from anywhere from country to blues to hard rock and heavy metal. And there's a band called Nightwish. They're a Finnish band from Finland, and they do symphonic metal, which is just, I mean, if you haven't heard them, you should look them up, because they'll blow your mind. It's just fantastic playing, and the songwriting, and the female vocalist that is very operatic, but as well as blending with heavy metal, it's just incredible.
So what was the first live show that you saw that blew you away?
Oh wow. I think probably Aerosmith. Steven Tyler is just, he's fantastic, and the band was always, I mean, I've seen probably several of their shows, and they're always fantastic. And then, of course, the Eagles was probably another one. I've seen the Eagles maybe 4 or 5 times in concert. They're always just so great, perfect tuning and perfect playing. And, and then I started I had a girlfriend that was really into music. And so she was dragging me to all these different concerts about, all kinds of players. But anyway, so then I watched, different other bands that when they became famous, they just played and they were, you could tell they were high and then probably drinking, they're drunk, and they just didn't give a damn about their playing. And I could tell it because I loved the playing, but they were playing out of tune and the timing wasn't great, and that was very disappointing. So I won't name the band.
Yeah, no, that's all good. So I'm curious in your life, just in general, who's been kind of a hero or an inspiration for you and what you've done?
I would I would say probably Chet Atkins, David Gilmour. Uh, I discovered Pink Floyd because when I went into business with my partner, and when I went out on our own, and he went to a concert once. He said, "We're going to see Pink Floyd," and I said, "Pink who?" I didn't have any idea because I was just so intent on doing the business part of it. I never had the time to go to concerts. So he went and he just said it was great. And so I started listening after that to some of their stuff, and I was blown away. You know, Pink Floyd is one of the, I guess, most inventive bands, and they're one of my biggest influences um, of all time. And
So,
of course, David Gilmour is just, one of the greatest guitar players, I think.
absolutely. So, what has kind of been your inspiration to be an aficionado of the guitar and to do the work that you've done? What is that has been kind of a driving force for you to continue to delve into this and to do it at such a high level?
Well, like I said, when I first started playing guitar, and I started collecting all these different guitars. I have a pretty good ear. I don't have perfect pitch, but I have a really good ear. And in fact, when we had several garage bands, all the other guitar players, I would say after a couple songs, I say, "You got to tune up. You're playing out of tune," and, and it would drive me crazy. And it would kind of, it never drove them crazy, but they just couldn't hear the difference. And I was driven by that, and I was always so. I had a very high mechanical ability. When I went in the Navy, I tested for 95% for mechanical and 95% for electronics. And so that's why I became an electronic technician. But I always wanted to tinker with the guitars. And so I always was trying various things over the years. And it was just such a frustrating thing for me not to have a guitar that played in tune. And I did all the typical things. I would hear guitar players that would say they tuned up a guitar, they played a few chords, and it wasn't in tune, so they had to like detune the G because it was so sharp and all these things. And so I finally realized after doing the compensated nut for a while that not only were the open chords playing sharp, but they were playing out of tune with each other. In other words, the high E, the B, and the G were all playing strings, but each one of them is a little larger diameter. So being a larger diameter, they played sharp at a different rate from each other. So it was two complex things. And I couldn't figure out why that was. And finally, after doing literally hundreds of guitars, I finally got the big picture. In a compensated nut, you're shortening the string length by extending the breakpoint of the nut, but you're also bringing the bridge intonation back towards the nut. So you're shortening both ends of the total string length, and it turns out to be a ratio of the fretted length to the actual guitar original string length. And it's a complicated thing, but in my book, I tried to make it, it's very math based, but I tried to make it so that the average guitar player could understand what I was talking about just in everyday terms. And I think I pretty well did that in the book. My book actually shows how and why it's necessary, but the series of videos I'm going to undertake now shows every step of how to do the job and set up a guitar to play in tune with the compensated nut and the re-intonated bridge. And it absolutely works. And I call it my magic stick because it is magic. It makes a guitar play much more in tune. You can even set up a guitar to play in tune if it's really high. I had one client that wanted to set up the guitar like it was high action to be able to play like a slide guitar. But he wanted to be able to make chords with it as well on the same setup. So the action was quite high, but you're able, no matter what you set the action at, you can still make the nut, a compensated nut, play in tune for whatever the setup is. So it's a combination of various things, but you have to set up the guitar the way you want it to play before you do a compensated nut job, because you'll go in circles if you don't do it right.
So, of everything that you've done and accomplished in your life, what are you the proudest of?
First, making all my guitars play in tune. And my philosophy was when I first started doing this and having such success that my goal was to make every guitar in America and the world play in tune one guitar at a time. And that was my goal.
So at the end of the day, everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone that knows you, but ultimately you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, I've always had this ability to choose. Like you hear of kids that grow up and they want to see how things work, so they tear it apart and then put it back together, just to see how, what they can learn from it. Well, that was me with guitars. I had to kind of tinker with them and take them apart and try different things just to see what would happen. And that's what led me to the the compensated nut, excuse me. So that was my most, and all my friends, and family members, they always thought, well, he's doing a great job, and all the success I had in doing this, and everybody was very impressed. Of course, my family, of course, thought I was doing great work, but just the fact that I made that kind of a breakthrough for my own satisfaction, and then translated that to doing my garage band mates, my friends, and then starting to do other clients, their friends and their guitar in the neighborhood. And so it grew after so many years, and I had my website, guitarnutcompensation.com, and that reached a lot of people, and so it became quite a deal. And I've done probably, I don't know, well over 400 guitars, I think, over the years. So seeing all those guitars and getting the big picture of how it all worked was quite a feat for me to accomplish. I'm very proud of that.
If you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one bona fide guitar god, who would you go see live?
Probably Pink Floyd and David Gilmour.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I had known about them, many years before when they were first coming out. But I mean, everything that I saw that they did was just kind of magic, And I think David Gilmour playing Comfortably Numb is just one of the most iconic things, I think. And it's always been one of my very favorites.
So if anyone out there wants to reach out, hire you, learn more about what you're doing, any of the good business in your world, where is the best place to go?
Well, the best place to go would be my website, guitarnutcompensation.com. It's got a whole ton of pictures of the work I've done with the compensated nuts, and that shows the first few videos that I put out, showing how the compensation works, and I'm really no longer able to do it because I developed neuropathy in my hands and my ring finger and pinky of both hands, so it's hard for me to even play right now and do the work. So that's why my goal is to impart my methods and my technology to everyone, that virtually for free. They can do the videos, see the videos. I'm not charging anything for anything except a small amount of money for my book, which the book is Guitar Nut Compensation: The Physics and Mechanics of Setting Up a Guitar to Play in Tune. And it can be purchased through Amazon or through me if you send me an email to dennishook@mac.com, and with the title book and your name and information and address. And if you'd like to purchase it, it's like $6.95 plus shipping and handling and taxes. And I can send you a book, and it's much cheaper than buying it through Amazon.
Okay. Dennis Hook, thank you, sir. Thank you for imparting your wisdom, your knowledge, your life story, and best of luck with everything. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.